internet of value at Ripple, we're thinking much bigger than just cross-border payments. It's kind of like Amazon with rare books in the early days, just this market happens to be a $10 trillion market.
We are at a historic turning point.
Said in the past that you are doing for money what email did for communication.
Moving the whole revolution forward.
Take on it.
There's trillions of dollars parked around the world. XRP.
Is there a possibility that Ripple could take over Swift one day?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So far, let's get right into today's video. This goes so deep that in today's video, you are going to witness what actually happened between JP Morgan, Swift, the SEC, and the targeting of Ripple and XRP. This is not crazy. This is not a conspiracy. These are events that took place behind closed-door meetings that we didn't hear about. There was corruptness, and I'm going to show you right now. The previous CEO of Swift, I'm going to call him the Godfather, said this.
That's why we have the SEC on securities to make sure that securities offerings are true to value. They say what they do, etc.
We got the SEC on securities, blah, blah, blah. Why is he even talking about that, right? In a moment, I'm going to give you a little snippet of the back and forth between him and Brad Garlinghouse, just to give you guys the tension that was in the air, okay? This goes really deep because JP Morgan from the get-go knew that Ripple and XRP were a threat. And I'm going to show you hardcore evidence. First, let's get into a clip by JP Morgan himself, Jamie Dimon, telling you, this is 6 months old in 2023, telling you that the private sector, they beat us to it.
Do you still think that fintechs have much to disrupt or innovate in financial services?
There are hundreds, and they've spent tons of money, and they still have tons of money. And I don't like talking about as a group. Yep. Some have done a great job, and we should acknowledge that. Some have done a great job. You and I wouldn't call them a fintech. There's something that a company came up with, which is fintech type services.
Yes.
Some did stuff that we could have done ourselves. And I think a company should be self-critical. Mm-hmm. We could have done ourselves, and we didn't. They beat us to it, or they simply did it better. And so we should acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. We could have done ourselves, and we didn't. They beat us to it, or they simply did it better.
And as you guys could see, the way that Ripple is accelerating throughout the world is eye-opening. And the beginning of time, when Ripple saw what JP Morgan came out with their JPM coin, they were against it. They said it doesn't make sense. They're not really solving anything. You're pretty much doing the same thing you're doing today, but on a closed infrastructure.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's really interesting about the JPM coin is that it's essentially just a database rebranded as a blockchain. There's really no inherent need for using a blockchain for that.
He was interviewing me. I said, so is Morgan Stanley going to use the JPM coin? And he's like, well, probably not. And so, well, is Citi going to use the JPM coin? Is B of A going to use the JPM coin? Is PNC? And the answer is no. If you're just moving it within the JPM ledger, and it has to be dollar to dollar, a one-to-one backing, it honestly doesn't actually, I don't understand what problem that solves.
And everybody knew that JP Morgan was one of the top banks that was retaining all of these fees that were being created by these payments.
How do I decide and tell my customers will move from the system to that? JP Morgan has systems they've been running for, years and years and years, and they make a lot of money off of them. So why would they mess with it?
Jamie Dimon makes a technical term of a shit ton of money.
JP Morgan has systems they've been running for, years and years and years, and they make a lot of money off of them. So why would they mess with it, right? So it's that kind of adoption that's difficult because it's like inertia, right? So I think that that's part of the issue, but I do believe, and I think everybody here believes, that we are at a turning point and people are starting to understand and they're really leaning in and thinking about, okay, what's my first use case? What can I actually do here?
We talk about Jamie Dimon, we first have to recognize where he sits. He sits at the top of the global financial infrastructure. There are a few banks, of which JPM is certainly one, that make billions and billions of dollars of profit by virtue of that perch. 99.9% of banks don't make money in this ecosystem in terms of cross-border payments. Jamie Dimon makes a technical term of a shit ton of money by sitting there.
But what gets very interesting here is the fact that the current director, the chairman of SWIFT, Graham Monroe, was previously at JP Morgan for 35 years. So SWIFT, JP Morgan, I mean, they're just picking their own guys. And you're probably saying, no, you're speculating. But the fact that before Graham, the director was Mr. Yawar Shah. Yawar was also the VP and managing director at JP Morgan for 20 years before he took over the chairman role at SWIFT. Again, they're keeping it tight. They're electing their corrupt individuals, you may say. At the end of the day, folks, you guys cannot even argue with me. This whole banking system is pretty much a Ponzi scheme. That's all it is. But it is a trusted Ponzi scheme because we, humans, we were born into this. There's nobody living right now that witnessed the day one of banking. Okay, we were just all born into this. That's why nobody could take it down. It's too big. Like, this just blows my mind that now it's Awar and now they're getting a very, very 35 years at JP Morgan, now at SWIFT. But take a look at this. The reason why I say JP Morgan went after Ripple, they got them sued. On December 10th, 2020, JP Morgan executes intraday repo transaction using blockchain. And it stated that using an in-house developed blockchain application which supported instantaneous settlement and maturity of the transaction in hours. Did you hear that? In hours, as opposed to days. And we know Ripple could do this in seconds. They're saying that their in-house application did this in hours. Again, they couldn't do it. And guess what? They needed time because their transactions are doing it in hours. They need a couple years to bring this down to seconds. What do? They go and tell the SEC to go after Ripple. Just 12 days later, the SEC charged Ripple and Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson. But it gets even better. This just doesn't even make sense. So they published this on December 22nd. And you guys all know that Jay Clayton, on December 23rd, the next day, I recently submitted a letter to President Donald J. Trump informing him today, December 23rd, 2020 will be my last day as chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. And his term was supposed to end in 2021.
That's why we have the SEC on securities to make sure that securities offerings are true to value, they say what they do, etc.
And you guys all watched movies where they put a gun to your head and they say you're going to do this and then you're going to resign the next day. And guess what happened? You could sit there and laugh and pretend like this is a conspiracy and this is all made up and that I'm just in la la land telling myself this. But no, this is reality. And the truth, we're not going to see it yet. We're only going to see it when the price of XRP explodes over $100. And every single doubter, you guys are going to be proven wrong. This is, I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. And since day one, let's go back to this video between The Godfather and Brad Garlinghouse. Like, this dude pretends like his shit don't stink.
All right. Excited for this panel. This is going to be very interesting discussion, debate. We've encouraged lively, respectful debate here with both of you. Great lineup. Great to have you both on stage. I believe for the first time appearing together here.
Yes.
So we have Godfrey Lee.
Yes.
So we have Godfrey Lee Brandt, CEO of SWIFT, and Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple. So you've said before that you think there's a world where Ripple could take over SWIFT.
Well, I've also said I thought there was ways we could work with SWIFT.
Let's talk about that.
Well, I'll start that comment just by saying, look, SWIFT is, I think Godfrey, by the way, has a very challenging job. Swift is owned by the banks. It isn't a traditionally kind of construct. You have a very strong chairman, and in-house Citi kind of is an important stakeholder in that. But at the end of the day, Ripple's trying to help financial institutions and banks be successful in the future, just to be clear.
Gottfried, how do you feel about a partnership with Ripple?
Well, first, we can negotiate it here.
Let's do that.
And that's why we regulate the financial industry. That's why we have central banks. That's why we have lenders of last resort. That's why we have the SEC on securities to make sure that securities offerings are true to value. They say what they do, etc. None of that exists in the crypto world, and I think that is
none of that exists in the crypto world.
I think that's an issue. None of that exists in the crypto world, and I think that is
none of that exists in the crypto world.
I think that's an issue. It's an issue. It's an issue.
I don't know how we can say none of that exists in the crypto world. I don't know how we can say none of that exists in the crypto world. I don't know how we can say none of that exists in the crypto world. Every Ripple transaction is going through a regulated endpoint to a regulated endpoint.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate every single one of you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's it. We're wrapping it up. We're going to put this in the storage room, and we're never going to talk about this again. This is happening. Swift, JP Morgan, they're deeply corrupt. That's why they keep putting their high executive, like, come on. If this is not hardcore evidence that Swift and JP Morgan are working hip to hip and putting their high level executives as chairman of Swift, so they're still together, they're pretty much the same company, right? I mean, you could just say that. It's the same mentality, right? It's the same leadership that you're gaining. It's not going to change. We will be back with another episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I will be down there. This is pretty crazy. Let me know what you guys think. Seriously.
Building RippleNet with the thesis that crypto liquidity would eventually be able to support robust global payments, large payments. RippleNet was designed so that customers seeing the benefits of our fiat-based network could flip the switch to ODL once the market was mature enough. And this is exactly what's happening. Flip the switch. I think what we're building has, it's solving a real problem. And I think all of the tokens, my advice to anybody would be, understand the utility. If there's real utility and there's real value being delivered to a real customer, there will be value in the token.